CBS presents For Our Times. Today, a year of our times. Now here's your host, CBS News correspondent Douglas Edwards.
Все подчинено единой цели – быстрее ликвидировать последствия.
The images of a year can confound as much as they explain. In this respect, 1986 was no different from all the years that preceded it. Though there is peace in much of the world, bloody wars are being waged, such as the one between Iran and Iraq, and in Afghanistan, Angola, Nicaragua, and elsewhere across the globe. In the United States, there was a national celebration of the Statue of Liberty's centennial anniversary. In Haiti and the Philippines, dictators were deposed. But today's political freedom remains a matter of struggle there and in many other countries around the world. And while many herald our arrival into a period of economic prosperity, family farms in American heartlands are being forced to close. And our cities are experiencing an unprecedented tide of homeless on their streets. Undoubtedly, there were triumphs, the recent around-the-world flight of Voyager, for example, but unfortunately, more often, a year is marked by its tragedies. In 1986, these were Challenger, Chernobyl, a massive chemical spill in the Rhine River, Europe's central artery. At first hearing, they seem like disasters from the future or the world of science fiction, space, nuclear power, deadly toxins. These events bring home just how fragile our culture and natural environment truly are. For all of our achievements in learning and technology, these sad moments offer confirmation that our highest ideals still have to be realized within the down-to-earth limitations of everyday lives. The spiritual values of these lives and the way they're rooted in tradition, culture, and community while confronting a challenging new world is our concern here at For Our Times. In this program, we will take a brief look back through excerpts from some of our work in the year that has just ended. Harry, roll the tape, please. Religion and culture have always been central forces shaping our history. But it was perhaps with the 1979 victory of the Iranian Revolution and the establishment in Iran of an Islamic Republic that the world regained an understanding of the continued influence of religious beliefs in the secular politics of the modern world. Religion's emphasis on human dignity and a relation to God can be traced at the roots of many ideologies, though the task of realizing those highest ideals always proves to be daunting. In 1986, communities of religious believers were a potent force in the affairs of many countries. The Roman Catholic Church under Filipino Cardinal Jaime Sin played a large role in the people power uprising that dislodged the veteran dictatorship of President Ferdinand Marcos. And newly elected President Corazon Aquino continues to emphasize the centrality of her spiritual values in setting direction for her new administration. In South Africa, where the apartheid regime this year raised the level of violence and repression to maintain its rule, two national religious leaders from the oppressed black community rose to greater positions from which to continue their criticism of apartheid. The Reverend Desmond Tutu was made Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, and Alan Bosak was elected moderator of his church, the Dutch Reformed Mission Church.
The children.
Here in the United States, the Vatican relieved the popular Archbishop of Seattle, Raymond Hunthausen, of sole authority in his office because of his approach to the subjects of divorce, homosexuality, and the education of seminarians.
The latter states...
Rome also stripped Catholic University theologian Charles Curran of his license to teach for outspoken views on similar controversial social issues in conflict with Vatican teachings. But both decisions were met with a public skepticism here that reveals the disagreement Catholics are facing today from within their own church. religion today is not solely an impetus for foment and change. Abiding traditions are themselves a part of the unique sensibility religions offer to the sometimes alienating scenes of modernity. This sense of tradition is expressed in ceremonies and rituals, in objects of art, and in persons who come to embody the beliefs and values of an entire community, such as the Eastern Orthodox Patriarch Athenagoras I, profiled in the program Beyond Tomorrow, The Vision of Athenagoras.
In 1948, the Ecumenical Patriarchate's Holy Synod elected Athenagoras Ecumenical Patriarch, spiritual leader of the world's 200 million Orthodox Christians. When he left the United States for Istanbul, penniless, with one robe and a pair of shoes, in his friend President Harry Truman's personal plane, the Greek Orthodox Church of the Americas had grown from 119 to 350 parishes. The Greek community had grown in status and renown.
In another program entitled Frontier Jews, For Our Times explored the world of early Jewish settlers in the American West.
Wherever there were settlements of any significance throughout the entire West, Jews were there too, even in the tiniest hamlets. Some came as peddlers and merchants. Others, like Barry Goldwater's grandfather, Big Mike, transported merchandise by ox team from army forts to Indian reservations. Big Mike later became a successful merchant in Prescott, the territorial capital. In 1885, he was elected mayor of Prescott. Here is a picture of Barry's father, Barron, who helped put Phoenix on the map.
In Voices of Islam, the Muslim faith was discussed in light of present-day distortions and unfortunate events associated with the community. A muezzin is calling the faithful to daily prayer. One of the symbols of the devotion to God that is the deepest spirit uniting Islam across the globe. In Mecca, Muslims from Asia worship at the sacred Kaaba side by side with believers from Arabic and African countries, as well as pilgrims who have made the journey from the West. A testimony to a majestic world religion. Recently, however, a different image of Islam has been in tension with this ancient spiritual tradition. The continued aggravation of the Arab-Israeli conflict, acts of militancy by self-professed Islamic fighters, and alarmist representations of Muslims in cinema and television have contributed to a distorted image of Islam that has reached a critical pitch. Reflecting this concern, the National Council of Churches of Christ issued a resolution last May deploring attacks on persons of Arab, Christian, and Muslim background in the United States. The experience of faith often still remains rooted in sacred places and heritage lands, whether in the ancient Christian city of Ephesus on the Anatolian plain of Turkey's Asia Minor.
It is a pity that Ephesus seems so little known to the average Christian, for it became, even before the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the most important center of the early church. Its Christian fellowship, established by St. Paul on his second missionary journey, first of the 7 churches of the Apocalypse, site of the Great Council, the see of St. Timothy and St. John the Divine, and possibly the home of the Virgin Mary for many years. Centuries of turbulence, wars, earthquakes, and the slow erosion of time itself have left what was a great metropolis a dusty but awesome ruin, only now being drawn foot by foot from the encroaching hills. Perhaps that is why people speak of it as if it were a mythical city, or as legendary as Atlantis and Troy. It does seem to lie under a spell.
Or in the Lutheran peasant community of Osegard in Hungary.
Here in Ösegard, the old values prevail. Women stay at home with chores and devotions, while the men take their afternoon beers and schnapps in the local wine garden. Until recently, under the Marxist-Leninist state system of New Hungary, Lutheran Christianity relied on the covert practice of home worship to sustain its community. And Bishop Zoltán Kaldi of Hungary has been influential in developing the theology of diakonia, or service, giving his church a new role in the emerging Hungarian society. Kaldi has said, society builds on the Marxist-Leninist ideology. The church builds on the gospel.
The trauma of having to leave one's homeland and kin for reasons of belief or hardship is an experience that many Americans share in their family past. Today's sanctuary movement for refugees of war in Central America has emerged largely out of the North American religious community. Today, 300 churches of various denominations are involved. In Tucson, Arizona, 6 church workers were convicted of violating immigration laws in a trial where the defendants were not allowed to refer to their religious beliefs in their own defense. In E Pluribus Plenum, For Our Times shed light on the beliefs of earlier refugees to America's shores. In the early years, around 1790, some 4 million immigrants were residents of the United States. By 1870, the population grew tenfold to almost 40 million, with new arrivals from Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia, and other mostly northern European nations. From the 1880s to the present day, subsequent movements of people from all parts of the world have boosted the population to 250 million and made the U.S. the most ethnically diverse nation on earth. However, immigrant groups were often not welcomed. They were forced to deal with ethnic discrimination and oppression before they could gain acceptance. Blacks suffered a history not of their choosing. So too, Native American Indians. And there was religious prejudice as well. But over time, residual hostilities were no hindrance to an amazing proliferation of branches, denominations, and ethnic groupings of religious congregations. There are Episcopalians, Evangelicals and Disciples and Copts, Armenian Orthodox and Missouri Lutherans. There are Baptists and Baha'is, and Buddhists and Brethren. There are Greek Orthodox and multi-ethnic Roman Catholics, Congregationalists and Fundamentalist Protestants, Mormons, Moravians, Methodists, Muslims, Hindus, Christian Scientists, Nazarenes, Serbian, Syrian, and Romanian Orthodox, Oriental Lutherans, Pentecostals, Presbyterians, and Quakers. Local congregations preserve traditional ethnic and cultural values. In an age of ecumenical mergers, there are still more than 200 different major church bodies in the country. Jews are Sephardic and Ashkenazic and Hasidic. They are Reformed, Conservative, Reconstructionist, and Orthodox. Americans, all. An important component of the religious dimension is a moral understanding of contemporary social issues. In a series of programs on violence, child abuse, intimate crimes, and children to Cain, For Our Times examined the problem of violence in the home and in society. Each year, thousands of women come to places like this. They often arrive with children in tow and little money, fleeing a situation which has become intolerable for them. Frightened and demoralized, they seek the shelter of facilities for abused women, like this one in suburban Nassau County, New York. Maria was one of those women.
Well, the first time that he abused me, I went to my priest, and they find a family from church. I stay with them 1 week. Then they talked to my husband. He said he's gonna change, that he loved me, and they talked to me and say that I should forgive him because he's gonna change. So I went back with him, and he did it again. And I went back to my priest again, and they gave me a shelter, another family from church, for another week. I was pregnant, and I love him, and he was, after me, to please forgive him, and I forgive him, went back to him. I started to feel, very depressed, with nobody to talk, no family. He didn't let me go to church. He didn't even let me to open the shades. I have to be in the house all the time, and he came possessive, very jealous. So when he abused me the third time, I just called the police, and that was it. I left.
If early childhood is recognized as the most sensitive period for the patterning of violent behavior, then the cartoons, movies, and toys that capture children's imaginations are crucial to an inquiry into violence. Though the legacy of Cain might seem to suggest that violence is part of the heritage of all humanity, some believe that a less violent culture is possible through new social architectures.
If you look at every great religious system in early Christianity, it's clear that what we call nonviolence was already contained in those religious and spiritual traditions, just as it would be in Buddhism and so on and so forth. So that there's nothing new about it. There's nothing new about it. The 20th century, I think, is the era, the first time in history when nonviolence really begins to take on a mass political significance beyond its religious significance. And particularly around the figures of Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and so on. In any case, people who were able to organize, socially transformative mass movements on a nonviolent basis. Very, very impressive.
Religion may play an important role in tempering the violent emotions that may erupt in South Africa after nearly a century of the apartheid national policy. The subject was addressed in 2 programs, first in a series of interviews with central religious leaders from the country, and second in excerpts of the ceremony of installation of the Reverend Desmond Tutu as Archbishop of Cape Town.
People of this diocese, I present to you the most reverend Father in God, Desmond Mfilu Tutu, our undoubted bishop. Give him your loyalty and affection. Keep him in your prayers and bid him welcome in the name of the Lord. We welcome you in the name of the Lord.
Remember that the government has rejected gentle persuasion. The ball is still in the court of the government and the white community. We want to live amicably with you. We want one united South Africa where everyone matters because each of us is created in the image of God. We shall be free, all of us, black and white, for it is God's intention. He enlists us to help him to transfigure all the ugliness of this world into the beauty of his kingdom. We shall be free, all of us, because the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, our Lord, assures us that life has overcome death, that light has overcome darkness, that love has overcome hate, that righteousness has overcome injustice and oppression, that goodness has overcome evil, and that compassion and caring and laughter and joy, sharing and peace, reconciliation and forgiveness have overcome their awful counterparts in God's kingdom, where God is all in all. O depth of wealth, wisdom, and knowledge in God! How unsearchable his judgments, how untraceable his ways! Who knows the mind of the Lord? Who has been his counselor? Who has ever made a gift to him to receive a gift in return? Source, guide, and goal of all that is. To him be glory forever. In the beginning, God. In the end, God.
Another region where religion is proving to be a powerful engine for change is among the faith movements of the poor in Central and Latin America. In a 4-part mini-series, Hunger for God, Hunger for Bread, the Faith of Latin America's Poor, the role of the Catholic Church in the poorest communities of Nicaragua, Peru, and Brazil was explored by 2 American priests.
In the course of the journey to be fully explored in this series, the 2 would speak to farmers, mothers, theologians, and bishops. Fathers Fenton and Elizondo were to visit communities and church people in Nicaragua, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and the barrios of Lima, Peru, where they walked the streets, met the cardinal, and sang with the children of Callao, one of the poorest neighborhoods of the city.
In Lima, I couldn't help but wonder as I went around that city, well, where's the industry? Where are the jobs? What are you going to do with all these people? So the question becomes, who's going to help these people? And it appears that the church is one of the major agencies of genuine, real aid in terms of feeding them and in clothing them.
In Nicaragua, the 2 priests went to a village mass at the Honduran border to see religious life in the zone of civil war.
Here, for them, belief involves not just going to church a certain hour on Sunday morning, but belief is what permeates their whole life from beginning to end. When we talk to different people, they tie in their faith to their collective spirit in their new farms they're farming, into the education of their children, into better nutrition.
This new sense of dialogue in the church was also the focus of What the Spirit Said to the Church, a series of programs dealing with the last Synod of Bishops in Rome, convened to discuss the legacy of Vatican II.
Among them was John Cardinal Crowell of Philadelphia, one of the president delegates. He summarized the aims of this synod.
The original intent of the synod was very clear. Symbolically, the Pope went to St. Paul's, the very place where Pope John the 23rd announced the Second Vatican Council. It was on January the 25th, the same day that the Pope John was there. And he called the extraordinary synod to commemorate the 20th anniversary, to revive the spirit of spiritual fraternity, collegiality, and communion. Thirdly, to verify the degree to which the council documents were implemented or not implemented. And fourthly, to make a commitment to promote the full implementation. Those were the 4 purposes. And all 4 purposes were accomplished. Somewhere along the line, somebody perceived a behind-the-scene effort to suppress the council. Well, this is contrary to everything that Pope John Paul has said. Immediately after his election, he made the commitment to implement the council and to complete the revision of the Code of Canon Law. He has done this time and again. He says that the council is his point of pastoral reference. And so that was the purpose for which this was called, and that was the purpose which was accomplished by this extraordinary synod.
And the spirit of dialogue went beyond the church, as exemplified in Pope John Paul II's historic visit to the oldest synagogue in Rome.
The Pope, Bishop of Rome, John Paul II, a man who himself had seen suffering, came to this synagogue, was welcomed, and addressed the Jewish community as dear elder brothers.
These are excerpts from the Pope's speech. This gathering concludes in a way after the pontificate of John XXIII and the Second Vatican Council, a long period which we must not tire of reflecting in order to draw from it the appropriate lessons.
And finally, for children's taste, during the summer months, we offered a rebroadcast of several episodes of the celebrated series Marshall Efron's Illustrated, Simplified, and Painless Sunday School.
I've come to challenge you, Goliath! Who are you?
In the year to come, For Our Times will continue to document the forces of religion and culture forging the world around us. Programs are already planned on subjects such as gambling, AIDS, Aboriginal cultures of Australia, and the bicentennial of the Constitution. As the 1988 presidential campaigns start up, we may see evangelist Pat Robertson emerge as a formidable candidate, with a range of implications worthy of discussion. Assembled with proper patience and understanding, the images of a year can help us look more deeply into the meaning of our times. We hope you'll join us.
Now, National Geographic takes you on assignment with TV adventures like you've never seen before. Meet intriguing people in faraway places, share the spirit of adventure, and experience the boundless wonders of nature. Join National Geographic in a bold quest for life's next great adventure. National Geographic on assignment.
This Sunday at 11:30 a.m. on TV8. In Ottumwa, tune to Translator Channel 74 for better reception of